Good afternoon. It's my honor to welcome you to Colorado State University for 2 days designed to energize innovative thinking and strengthen connections among those with a passion and a desire to help build a safer, healthier, and more sustainable world for future generations. I want to offer a special welcome to our guests from DARPA, who are hosting this series of 6 DARPA Forward events around the country, beginning with the one here today. For more than 60 years, DARPA has been a leading force in the advancement of breakthrough technologies that benefit not only national security, but the quality of life we all enjoy, from voice recognition and translation technologies to the GPS that probably helped some of us find our way here today. And this series is an opportunity to bring together a remarkable group of participants: scientists, entrepreneurs, industry leaders, the military, government officials, foundations, and the general public, with a goal to advance disruptive technologies and transformative solutions that serve our national and human interests. In just a few moments, you'll hear from DARPA Director Stephanie Tompkins. As I was preparing my welcome remarks, I thought about something that I read that Stephanie had said recently, and I'll quote here. "In our search for transformative solutions, what we worry most about are the ideas that we never hear." That, to my mind, is the real beauty of holding this series of DARPA conferences at universities like Colorado State. In higher education, we worry every day about the ideas that are lost when talented young people don't have an opportunity to pursue a degree that can bring their ideas to life and then to the table. We worry about ensuring that our faculty have the support, time, and opportunity they need to explore and test the ideas that lead to even better ideas and innovations. And we worry about how to get great ideas generated on our campuses effectively and how to get them out into the marketplace where our country and society can benefit. These are issues that we care about a great deal in higher education, not just because they matter to the success of our institutions and students, and they do, but because our success in all of this matters to the security, sustainability, and competitiveness of our nation over the longer term. At Colorado State University, we're fortunate to be in a state with a robust technology innovation ecosystem, with industry leaders like Lockheed Martin, HP, Ball Aerospace, Palantir Technologies, Maxar Technologies, and more, headquartered in the state. With exceptional research strength among the state's 3 research universities, and with 34 federal research labs and consortia concentrated along the Front Range, the largest concentration outside Washington, D.C. As a university focused relentlessly on innovation, a university that has consistently ranked in the STARS ranking system as the most sustainable in the country, and a university with one of the most productive research faculties per capita in the United States, we're proud to help lead this conversation. Our faculty are leaders in the areas of One Health, biosecurity, laser technology, clean and alternative energies, food systems, and more. Innovation is what they do. But how we build the partnerships we really need to advance, and how we mobilize the resources we have to more effectively marshal in times of crisis, to face threats to national security, and how we successfully educate and inspire a new generation of competitive thinkers and innovators are all questions that we look forward to exploring today. So as I welcome you to Colorado State University, I'm welcoming you to a place where the focus of this conference is in the air that we breathe every day. We hope you'll take time to explore our campus and the beautiful community of Fort Collins. We're enormously proud of both and honored to welcome you all and DARPA Forward here this week. Thank you. It's my privilege next to introduce Dr. Alan Rudolph. I was involved with recruiting Alan here nearly 10 years ago. Alan has ties to the Defense Department and had an extremely successful career in academia, but what helped attract him was us to him, and we hope him to us, was exactly the focus of this conference, the connections between academic ideas, national security, innovation, and new solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll help welcome the Vice President for Research for Colorado State University, Dr. Alan Rudolph.
Good afternoon. It's my distinct honor to introduce Dr. Stephanie Tompkins, the current director of the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. And it was my distinct honor to work with Stephanie when she was the vice president of research at the Colorado School of Mines. Welcome back to Colorado, Stephanie. Stephanie spent much of her life leading scientists and engineers in interdisciplinary programs. She began her career at SAIC, where she spent 10 years conducting and managing research in planetary mapping, geology, and imaging spectroscopy. She was a program manager in the Strategic Technology Office, where she created and managed programs in ubiquitous GPS-free navigation, as well as optical component manufacturing. She served as the deputy director of the DARPA's Strategic Technology Office, director of the DARPA's Defense Sciences Office, my alma mater, and the agency's most exploratory office in identifying and accelerating breakthrough technologies for national security, as well as serving as the acting deputy director under Steve Walker, who's in the audience as well. She was trained as a geologist and geophysicist from Princeton and Brown, and she served as a military intelligence officer in the U.S. Army. And now, here's a little bit more about Stephanie.
Coming to DARPA is like grabbing the nose cone of a rocket and holding on for dear life.
DARPA is a place where if you don't invent the internet, you only get a B.
A DARPA program manager quite literally invents tomorrow.
We are thinking about innovation unconstrained. Where can we go?
Predict what is emerging as threats.
We're looking for the applications that seem impossible.
That passion will be saving lives 5, 10, 15 years from now.
Coming to work every day and being humbled by that.
The innovation and collaboration, it's a team effort.
We're not builders of the ultimate technology.
It's the engineers and scientists at the companies and universities that we fund that ultimately are going to bend metal and write code and deliver these capabilities to warfighters.
DARPA is not one person or one place. It's a collection of people that are excited about moving technology forward.
Let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Stephanie Tompkins.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and good afternoon and welcome to our very first DARPA Forward event. My deepest thanks, Chancellor Frank, Alan, and everybody here at CSU for providing us this amazing venue. They have been incredible partners in helping us set up a pretty bold experiment, which we'll talk a little bit about and you will all get to experience. On a personal note, I want to mention, too, that it is incredibly wonderful for me to be back home in Colorado. So my job keeps me in Washington most of the time, but I miss the mountain air. And it's wonderful to be back and to be among you again. So my role today, in the next 15 minutes or so, is to introduce you to DARPA and our mission, and to DARPA Forward itself. Give you a little sense of what we're trying to accomplish and how we're planning to do it. I thought, though, before I told you more about DARPA, it might be fun to tell you a little bit about yourselves as an audience. So we have got about 550, maybe a little more of you all together, 60% here physically in the building and another 40% online. Not counting the DARPA people, 10% of you are from the government, 40% from academia, and the remainder from industry, large and small. Now 30 of you, not 30%, but 30 of you are DARPA risers. If there are any risers in the room, can I see you raise your hands? Everybody take a look around. These risers are early career scientists and engineers. They were selected by DARPA program managers and by our universities here in the Colorado area because their research is related to national security and because it demonstrates the potential to lead to technological surprise, something that is very, very important to us. And one more statistic, almost half of you have never worked with DARPA before. That's really exciting to me. But it also means we have sort of a doubly tough mission, because I have two audiences. I promise you, we are here to satisfy both. For the old hands, that means those of you who have been working with DARPA for years, people like Alan, who may have been former DARPA program managers. We're here to let you know what we're up to, what we're thinking about for the future, to hear your ideas, and to make sure you know we continue to deliver on our mission. For the new folks, we want to introduce you to DARPA. This crazy, unconventional concept, as the video said, it's a collection of people that make up DARPA and the DARPA mission. You know, when I joined DARPA, and I'm not going to count how many years ago that was, I absolutely came in blind. I knew nothing. I don't actually recommend that. But if you do, it's not impossible, because in the normal DARPA way, people rally around me and help me climb up this incredibly steep learning curve. And they obviously did a good enough job that I got to know the agency a little bit better. What I wanted to try to do for all of those new folks, not just now, but in the course of the next day and a half, is just give you a feel of what DARPA is about, right? We can tell, but it's a whole lot better if we show and if we immerse you in that feeling. So I'm going to start off by just doing a little level setting on context. We live in a world where national security challenges abound. You know, adversaries, maybe a few decades ago, it used to be a lot simpler. We kind of knew who the adversary, who the enemy was. Last 20 years, we've been spent focusing on terrorism, terrorist networks. And then more recently, we've seen the emergence of a lot of criminal networks with serious global security implications. And now, just when a lot of people thought we didn't have to think about it anymore, we have to think once again about adversary nation states. And sometimes you'll find crossing over between these different kinds of groups. They're working at multiple scales and extensively in not only the physical but also the virtual world. Meanwhile, technology is dynamic and democratized and moving faster than ever. That's awesome in terms of our ability to solve problems, but it's also terrifying in the ability for adversaries to create new problems that we might not have anticipated. And of course, the backdrop to all of this is a world and a nation which is increasingly interdependent, but at the same time volatile. People are exhausted. They're grieving from the pandemic, they're angry, and they're afraid of change. So national security today doesn't look like what you might have thought it looked like, and maybe what it looked like, again, a few decades ago, where it was aircraft, ships, weapons systems, things like that. Today, national security means everything from biodefense to cyber to material science, atmospheric and climate modeling, you name it. There's a good chance that whatever you're working on is probably important to national security. And whatever that is, the field and the possibilities are changing rapidly. Keeping our nation safe is not easy. So what do we do about it? I'm pretty sure it won't come as any surprise to you that we at DARPA think science and technology are an important part of the solution. Science and technology used wisely, purposefully harnessed, are key to our national security, as well as to incredible societal and economic advances. To make those advances takes an ecosystem. Fortunately, you're already part of that ecosystem. And when I think of the ecosystem, I think of funders and doers, right? The funders, National Science Foundation, Department of Defense, of course, and all of its entities, the Department of Energy, other government agencies, both state and federal, corporate R&D, philanthropists. You know, there are all kinds of interesting sources driving funding into the research world. And then we have the doers, the universities and the nonprofits, industry, small business, and government labs. And all together, that ecosystem collectively moves technology steadily forward on many, many different technology fronts. So within that ecosystem, we at DARPA, we are the disruptors. We were created during the Cold War in response to a huge technological surprise, the launch of the Sputnik satellite. The United States did not want to be surprised like that ever again, and decided at the time that the best way to prevent technological surprise was to create it. And with that, DARPA was born. For 64 years, we have made and continue to make pivotal investments in breakthrough technologies for national security. We want to change the trajectories of technology. We want to accelerate the path, or we want to find entirely new ways to solve problems. So when it seems like there may be two impossible choices, where, say, national leadership is stuck between the proverbial rock and hard place, our job is to look for a third way. I'll give you a really simplistic example. Are there material scientists or engineers in the crowd? Raise your hand. Yeah, I see quite a few. Unsurprisingly, you naturally map to the DARPA mission. You know this challenge. Give me something super, super strong that's super, super light at the same time. When you can succeed in doing that, you found a third way. Speaking of material science, I don't know if you all know this, but DARPA was seminal in the creation of the discipline of material science and engineering way back in the early 60s. A few other things that we're known for, besides what you've already heard, Saturn V rocket, which took human beings to the moon for the very first time. The ARPANET, which grew up and graduated to become the internet. And we had a few things called grand challenges. In fact, our very first grand challenge was focused on self-driving cars racing each other across the desert. How hard could that be, after all? Yeah, it turns out it was actually pretty hard. But the very next year, we did it again. And multiple cars passed the finish line. And a few years after that, we challenged those self-driving cars to interact with each other in traffic. And the self-driving car industry was born. You know, as you can imagine, I can go on all day. And when you talk to DARPA people, you're going to find out we love to talk about DARPA. But I just want to share one more little story, and this was incredibly relevant to the fact that we can all be here together today. And that's a program called ADEPT, started a little over a decade ago by an Air Force medical doctor who wanted to find a new way to vaccinate our warfighters because they traveled all around the world and faced diseases for which we had no protection. He introduced a lot of us to this concept of DNA and RNA vaccines. A lot of us had never heard of that before. Invested DARPA money in a little company called Moderna. I think some of you might have heard of it. Okay, but enough with the history. And I will say, although I love to talk about DARPA, and all of my colleagues love to do so as well, most of them don't want to dwell on the past. All I want to talk about is the future. So I think the self-driving car example may have indicated to you that we're not afraid of risk. In fact, we don't just, not fear it. We embrace it, and in fact, we celebrate it. But to be in an organization that celebrates risk, you actually have to do business differently. And we have a pretty atypical way of going about our jobs. So fundamentally, we recruit program managers from across different sectors, different parts, academia, industry, and other government labs, many different technological disciplines. We give them access to about a $4 billion budget, and we tell them to create and execute technology programs that will change the world. And then we keep the clock ticking, because after about 4 years, just when they get comfortable and think they know what they're doing, we kick them out, and we bring new people in. At any moment in time, there are 90 to 100 DARPA program managers racing against the clock. Collectively, they start about 50 new DARPA programs a year. And of course, some of them fail. We're taking risks. Some of them succeed. A few things that they're working on, I'm just going to do high-level pictures. At any moment in time, again, there are about maybe 200 DARPA programs, starting, finishing, somewhere wandering through the wilderness in their execution process. But out of way too many to talk about, I'm just going to highlight 3 sort of technical areas. You can't talk about technology in today's world if you don't at least mention artificial intelligence. So we are still in the middle of our AI Next campaign. DARPA likes to think about AI. We frame it as a series of waves, where the first wave was really rule-based. So think TurboTax. Second wave, statistics-based, right? Machine learning. This is what we are completely in the middle of as part of the era of big data. But the third wave brings those first two together, the wave of contextual reasoning. And this is where most DARPA programs that are focusing on advances in AI are moving. And I will tell you, I hear often enough bubbling in the halls conversations that indicate that some people are starting to brew whatever that fourth wave is going to look like. All right, microelectronics, another really hot topic. Moore's Law, right? You can sort of see a plot of that. Moore's Law has allowed continuous improvement in microelectronics for decades now, and it has enabled countless aspects of modern life. But the growth curve is flattening, and we need new breakthroughs. A few years ago, we launched something called the Electronics Resurgence Initiative, ERI for short. And ERI funded a lot of very high risk, and some having paid off, technologies and figuring out how we actually keep that trajectory growing. We need to now figure out how to make that real and practical, so we're getting ready to launch ERI 2.0, which focuses on manufacturability and tolerance of those new crazy microelectronics in real world and extreme environments. So keep your eye on that, and you'll be hearing more in a variety of different specific ERI-focused talks throughout the DARPA Forward event series. Now, those first two I talked about, they're very much in the tech push. While they're informed by very real-world missions, we are really pushing the boundaries of technology. But actually, more often in DARPA, we tend to focus our programs on a specific mission or a specific problem we're trying to solve. So we don't get too caught up in a single discipline. We're really focusing on what it is we're trying to change. And I can give you an example of what's occupying a lot of our minds right now, and that has to do with resilient supply chains. I figure that's one everyone can resonate with. The pandemic has really laid bare how fragile some of these complex supply chains are. And to give you an example of the way that we're thinking about it, again, many, many different ways, because our program managers are the ones who come up with this idea. In areas like food, water, and medicine, we think you can actually manufacture what you need right when and where you need it. And if that means your food is going to be made out of garbage, plastic, or your food and your water are going to be taken completely out of thin air, even air as thin as what's outside here, or your medicines are going to be made up of really easily available local commodity materials, we actually think that's possible and are in the process of proving it. We're thinking more about global, developing the modeling and simulation techniques and the computational tools needed to model these really complex global supply chains and be able to figure out in advance how to prepare and mitigate against shortages and crises. And of course, we recognize that no matter how good we are at making things when we want them, we're still going to have to do some kind of transport. So we are imagining whole new ways of creating transportation vehicles that cross boundaries between domains and do things we've never thought were possible. So as I said, these are just a very small sample of all the things that we're up to. But our business model, new people, new ideas, big risks. It's really important for you to understand the model because it brings us to why we're here today. DARPA Forward. The idea of bringing people together, this isn't new. DARPA has historically brought people together periodically every few years or so for big events. And out of those events, great connections have been made. I've personally been through at least 3 of them. They are extraordinary, really energizing. Ideas have been sparked, and successes and failures both have been celebrated. But I was always asking a question in the back of my mind. Who wasn't there? Who were we missing? And a number of years ago, I had a chance to leave Washington for what I thought was forever, come out here to Colorado, and I met all the people that we were missing. I was talking to incredibly brilliant scientists and engineers in both universities and companies across the state, and they were working on very important problems and doing crazy things with technology, focusing on things like natural resources or wildfires, energy, of course. And most of them had never heard of DARPA. So with DARPA Forward, we had the idea that we should do things differently. Instead of having these big, giant gatherings one place in the country where we expect you to come to us, we wanted to come to you. You know, I've been doing a lot of reading lately, doing a lot of past history reading, pre-DARPA even, because it's always good to understand context when we think about how we want to move forward. And there is a term that I really love, and that was one that Franklin Delano Roosevelt used a lot during World War II. He talked about the arsenal of democracy. And he was referring to the shift of our commercial industry, particularly manufacturing, but across all business sectors, towards a focus on being able to manufacture military equipment. And because they brought the creativity and ingenuity of their non-military focused world to this very military problem, they were able to succeed beyond anyone's wildest dreams. And they were fundamentally the key to our and the Allies' ability to prevail in World War II. Okay, this is not World War II. It's a very different world, but I think I did point out earlier that it's a very complex and volatile one, and it's one that we have never really experienced before. And we are kind of learning as we go. And I can't think of a better time where we can take advantage of ideas from all over, our own sort of non-manufacturing, but maybe idea-focused arsenal of democracy. So what I'm hoping to accomplish with DARPA Forward is to encourage at least some of you to think about taking a leap with us. Help us think the thoughts we haven't come up with yet. If you have even an inkling of being a little interested in this, we've got lots of information in the brochure, the one that you in the room have physically and is virtually available for everyone online. If you're an adrenaline junkie and you love technology, you might want to think about working with us. So to help with that, we have planned the agenda for the next day and a half to try to give you a taste of what it's like to be part of DARPA. It's really compressed, but not that much. It is not unlike the daily conversations, the arguments I'm hearing in the hall or seeing over Zoom, these kind of mind-altering challenges to your assumptions and our assumptions of what's actually possible. We're going to do that through a series of portfolio briefs where DARPA folks are going to tell you about what we're currently working on and what they're getting ready to tackle next. We have some pretty amazing keynote speakers, panelists who will blow your mind, the questions and the arguments. We're looking for really dynamic conversations. And then in between, some really interesting palate cleansers in the form of lightning talks and tech demos. Now, as you look at the agenda and think about what's coming, I encourage you to put aside any notions you may have about whether a topic fits with your discipline or your area of interest. I'm guessing a lot of you have already decided what you want to skip, so you can go spend a little more time in the hall, just because you think it's not in your field. And I'm going to ask you, try not to do that too much. Please be open to an unexpected connection on a problem outside of your expertise. So at the end of tomorrow, if we've been successful, your brain will hurt. But I think in a good way. I promise you my brain will hurt. If we have been successful, at least some of you will go away with new ideas or new sparks that will convince you that you may want to focus either on working with DARPA or at least thinking on spending a little bit of your time and your attention on taking your expertise and focusing on problems of national security. By the way, it's a bit of a tradition to announce some big new DARPA initiative at events like these. And I'm not a slave to tradition, but I'm not about to buck it. So we will share some news tomorrow afternoon at the end of the day about a big bet that we're getting ready to make. If your brain has not exploded by then, it'll give you something to think about on the way home. In the meantime, we're going to get started with DARPA Forward. First up, we have a lightning talk on rethinking competition.